Metal Mike coming at you. Buzzard junk and antiques. Basically always coming at you with tips, a rant. Let's just talk as collectors. This one is going to specifically touch on items to sell on eBay that are smalls, simply meaning easy to ship, and you can sell them in lots or individually. Now let's start out with something that you might not know about and is kind of flying underneath the radar right now. Cassette tapes. Now in general, cassette tapes are a bust. There's not a lot of value in them, and as I make a little room here so I can show you what I'm talking about, there is a high-end value in heavy metal and punk cassettes, and of course the rare ones like Frank Zappa, not so much rare, but just the more in demand, of course Beatles. You go into those real classic bands, Queen, Led Zeppelin, anything that's a very early release, which you can usually tell by the cover and the cassette tape itself. Now heavy metal from the 1980s is really a market that is not going to drop out. It's going to continue to go up in value, and that is on cassettes and vinyl. Meaning, if you can find a big stack of heavy metal albums, especially like thrash, death metal, black metal, and when I say that, that period took place anywhere from 1980 up until I would say about 1992 is when it kind of peaked out with the black metal. Bands like, now remember these names, Mayhem, Bathory, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, thrash metal bands, the basics, Metallica, Slayer, Exodus, Anthrax, and then anything in that era, even Christian metal. Now, cassette tapes. Now, right here we have nothing really spectacular. We have LA Guns, Bon Jovi, Lita Ford, Rat, Scorpions, David Lee Roth, Skid Row, Van Halen's, a couple Black Sabbaths, Rainbow, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Judas Priest, Alice Cooper. Just running over these names for you, kind of just giving you keywords and to kind of tip you off, to click you when you see it out. You'll remember one of these bands. Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, of course. Even basics, Rush, Led Zeppelin, Willie Nelson, Robert Johnson, the old blues guitarist, 38 Special. Now these tapes right here, and then of course you even go into the comic ones, Richard Pryor, Cheech and Chong. These are in high demand. Now you can sell them individually, and it's a hit and miss on that. You know, you might not get as much value, but what I have noticed is in the cassettes especially, a large lot. So with those right there, I'll break them down into sections. I'll have kind of like a hair metal, 1980s metal, and then I'll put in Van Halen, Skid Row, and just kind of group anything that's kind of pretty and more pop metal. Metal is a huge underground scene. It's something that is so massive, yet it seems as if nobody knows about it. So these collections are highly sought after, and cassette tapes, though not as valuable as vinyl, obviously, the better ones like your Bathories, Venom, early Slayer, those releases. Now here we're going into different sections. We've got a kind of early 1990s here with bands like Dumpster Clutch, which really aren't heavy metal, Babes in Toyland, Alice in Chains, you know, Beastie Boys, the Melvins, Korn, Red Hot Chili Peppers, kind of a 1990s situation. Then you get your basics, Faith No More, Iron Maiden, Pantera, Anthrax, Megadeths. Now I'll sell these in one massive lot, Sepultura, Sereth Ungol, Voivod, Overkill, Nuclear Assault. Now you're going, why are you just sitting there naming off these bands? Well, remember a couple of them, and maybe if you run into a large collection, now you can get these cheap. You might be able to get a whole box of them for $5. And of course, the older and the more rare, the better. Now I have doubles on some, like this first Megadeth, which I think is like a 1994 release of Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, on cassette, Combat label, an independent label, mind you. This could be a later release, later pressing of it, but whatever the case, what I'll do to get to the point on this and wrap this end up is I'll put these on all in a lot, and I should do extremely well. And remember, the low end that I might have invested at this point is, oh, you know, I've amassed most of this collection from one guy, and I have sold them in lots before, but you can pick them up cheap, buy them, they're out there. Another thing, vinyl. Yes, we all know about vinyl. How can I get to this? But I'm really, as a picker and as a collector, just excited about this. I looked last night on eBay. I was looking at some vinyl by Frank Zappa that at this point is even over $100 per piece. That's a given. Frank Zappa. Obviously, that's something that you're going to look for. Almost everybody knows that. But I looked at this guy who was also selling other albums on eBay, and he had probably 1,000 of them. Boy, boom, 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 all day long. 157, 200 plus, 300, $500 a pop on vinyl. In the shrink mint. Boy, as I sat there and I started to comb through them, trying to, just like when I ran over with these heavy metal tapes, maybe to someone who's not into metal, the same thing. How the heck am I going to remember all these names? Hard task. But if you can remember a couple, and really, I guess, if you continue to study it, I tell you what, you basically go to albums and hit high end, what is selling the most. But it was very interesting, the stuff that was across the board. It was across the board of value, and real basics too. You know, there were a lot of special releases, promos, and if you can find a mint in the shrink, like I believe the very first Lindsey Buckingham, I want to say is his last name, the pronunciation, and Stevie Nicks, before they joined Fleetwood Mac, I seen one of those on there, sealed, and oh boy, was that going to town. Look that up. That should link you to the seller if it hasn't already sold. But boy, what a market there. Vinyl, vinyl, vinyl. So that means if you are an enthusiast of music, or you love music and you have a passion for it, whether it be blues, heavy metal, thrash, huge market, high end. I just picked up this Hellhammer. Why? Because I had it when I'm 17 years old, and now what? It's a cult classic. It's highly desirable. This is a first pressing of it. You have to watch out for that. That's another thing. But you usually are not going to run into that problem at a garage sale. But, like I said, if you can find some thrash metal, Venom, a lot of these, and all the independent labels, just because you haven't heard of them doesn't mean you should leave those behind when you find those rare Metallicas. Grab them all. You got to roll the dice. You got to go for it. And that's what we're hoping to do here. So we got that. We have the tapes, which we're going to get into lots. I've already got them broken down, if you've noticed. They are all together in sections. I've got my thrash metal section. I'm ready to rock and roll. Take pictures, get this stuff on eBay. It's time, after accumulating all this mass over the last 15 years, at this point of going out there picking, hitting dumpsters, doing house cleanouts for free. Free cleanouts. Most of this inventory is free. I have hardly anything invested. I pick up a nice little piece every now and then when I sell something from my collection at the flea market and such. But what we want to do now is we have comic books. I did a house clean out, a hoarder, I would bet about maybe 8 years ago. It was probably longer. It's already probably 10 years ago. What does that matter, you say? I've got boxes of comic books. This was a hoarder that had a trailer home that was full of comics. It was literally knee-high, and I walked across them. It was amazing. Vintage toys from the 1980s. Sadly, though, this was one of those hoarder situations, so, you know, 60 to 70% of it was destroyed by water and just by not taking care of it. But I was able to salvage comics, and I salvaged so many that at this point, I bet you, let's go count the boxes right now. I'll give you an idea where we're at. And comics are tedious. They have to also be done in lots or go out on a whim. Now right here, and when I say go out on a whim, I mean simply go ahead and list them one at a time. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 boxes of comics. Make sure these are the comics. No, these are magazines and coloring books. These 4 larger boxes. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 boxes out here. And you say, that's not a lot, Michael. It is a lot. They hold a ton. And a lot of it is early 90s, which is crap in the comic book industry, but there's a whole bunch sprinkled in there from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And that's the problem. As well as there are value to some from the 90s. Now, a lot of these look like rag mags, and they are. They're comic books. But in between there, there's a ton that are bagged, and even some that are ragged out due to the rarity have value. So these need to go into boxes right here, these 3 stacks. These 3 stacks. I have been organizing and fine-tuning this collection for quite some time. These stacks. These stacks. Those stacks. Comic books. The rest are magazines. Down here, magazines. Toys and models. Up here, just boxed race kits, model parts. I've got a lot of models, ton of model kits. I've got giant boxes down in here that are full of parts, really cool vintage ones, as is this box. Breaking it down, small pictures, other pictures. Oh, it never ends, kids. It never ends. So, got the washing machine running in the background. I'm going to show you. Hopefully that's all I got for comics. Looks like I got a couple more boxes back here. And I think that that's it finally. So, I've got to get those comics organized. I've got to get them on eBay. I actually had started to sell them on eBay just at the tail end of the year. I kind of dabbled in it. Like I said, I've been basically accumulating for the longest time. At this point now, it is time to flush this stuff out. Too much inventory. This is after about, I forget, I'd say about 12, 15 years of just out there working, busting ass, doing estate clean-outs, doing junk clean-outs, dumpster diving, doing everything. Body's busted down a little bit right now. Need to rest it a little bit. Need to sell these smalls, get them out. It's time to take this to the next level. And what does that mean? It means take it to the business level. We need a storefront. You know, there's not a lot of business that I think I will do out of a storefront, but location, location, location. I have an idea for a place that I can sap off of another store. And what does that mean? That means I'll be near a thrift store that pulls in a ton of business, and if I'm right there across the street, boom, I get all that overflow, and that's what I'm going to count on. So, Metal Mike, just ranting and raving. Hey now!